So Cindy,
It's
since
it's official now.
it's official now, since you were the last guest in the first season, it seems appropriate to have a conversation with you about the second season and about what issues are affecting rural and remote communities, almost at an earth level. So you and I talked about a lot of things, and you and I have had quite a few conversations about our own issues and the things that we're dealing with in the world. I want to invite Spirit in to guide us both
Yes,
and
it's beautiful.
start the conversation with what we're feeling in this moment, what is coming up for each of us as we think about how we fit into healing rural Canada. What are some of the things that are missing or that we can hold space for? Who are the people that are being silenced, ignored, put on who's being put on a pedestal, and are they still on that pedestal for everyone? What's happening in the world? There's so much.
Yeah, there is so much. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as you know, I come from a very small community here. It's called Nibing. I call it Nibin, but it's called Nibing here by everyone. And it's south of Thunder Bay and just north of the Minnesota border. And in our very large geographical area, there's about 2,000 people here. So it's a very small community. We're really spread out. I mean, my closest neighbor is 2 kilometers down the road. So yeah, we're really spread out. And I would say that what I have been seeing coming up lately, first of all, is the election. That's one thing. And it's interesting to me that I'm seeing, sort of generally speaking, that I feel like people are being very cynical and critical of the candidates. And I don't really understand that perspective, because as someone who did run in an election in 2010, now, mind you, it was not for this small community, it was for the larger community of Thunder Bay. But I was thinking about these candidates this morning here in our area, and I was thinking, it takes great courage. It takes great courage to step up and put yourself out there and say, okay, I'm going to run for the upcoming election, because you're literally putting yourself out there. You are definitely stepping out of your comfort zone. And regardless of what your objectives are, or regardless of your perspectives, why wouldn't the rest of us at least respect you for stepping up? Not everybody has that courage. Not everybody has the ability or the freedom to do that. But yeah, I have a different respect or a different understanding of people that are stepping up and putting themselves forward as a candidate, and then to get voted on, right? To see if you get in. I mean, that's a whole different. I don't like the process, but that's what we have right now. So that's what we're dealing with. But yeah, I mean, I prefer, as you know, I prefer much more the circle concept and having everybody be included in the conversation, everybody that wants to be included in the conversation. And that, I prefer it that we arrive at a consensus and move forward from there. However, that's not what we have here right now. So why wouldn't we celebrate these individuals that are stepping forward to be a candidate, and yeah, celebrating that. Sure, we may not agree with their, like I say, their objectives or their perspectives, but again, I think it takes great courage to do that. So definitely that is something that I can see happening here now. On the land side of things, definitely I would say, we need to be, I would think, more educated about climate change and what's happening, and is there anything that we can do to reduce the impacts on the climate change? Can we somehow reconcile with the earth? Is there a way for us to do that? So I would think that would be another, sort of a big topic here. And those are the only two that are really coming up for me at this moment in time. Like, what is it? September 25th.
Well, and so I want to ask you, I want to like pull that apart a little bit with the, and we're talking about a municipal election in Ontario, Manitoba. There are a few other provinces, Atlantic Canada, some parts of Atlantic Canada, and I believe Northwest Territories, parts of the Northwest Territories are having municipal elections this year. And I want to ask you what your experience was running, because Thunder Bay isn't a huge community. It is bigger, obviously, in your area than Nebing, but what was your experience? Did you go door to door and at all candidates meeting? Was there intimidation from people and negativity from people when you campaigned? How did that go?
So I didn't have a budget. It was my first time ever running. I didn't have a budget. It was family and friends supporting me. And because I was running at large, so I chose to run at large because at that moment in time in Thunder Bay, there was no advocate for the Indigenous voices or even the voices of women. So I had chosen to run at large. Now, of course, thinking back, that probably wasn't the best decision. That was a Cindy Crowe ultimate goal decision, but I don't think politically speaking, it was the best decision. I possibly should have maybe just ran in my ward. I think the results would have been better. And then maybe the following term, run at large. Anyways, hindsight is always 20/20, as I say. But even though I had no budget, and even though I didn't really know what I was doing because I had never been a politician, quote unquote, I came in 12th, which was crazy amazing to me. I'm like, whoa. So yeah, I didn't beat out the incumbents. The incumbents got in, but to come in 12th without a budget, I thought, wow, I was very pleased with that, because it's a city of about 110,000. So, I think the results were good. And then following that, I had also been asked by NDP to be a nominee. And I did consider that. And I was ready to go with that until I received some spiritual direction. So I'll just briefly mention that the guidance that I received indicated to me that it was not a good use of my time and energy, that I would have, I guess, more heartfelt responses by continuing to do the work that I was doing as a lodge keeper versus being a politician, because it came to me that I realized that somebody was going to hand me a piece of paper every morning and say, okay, these are the people that you're talking to today. This is your script. This is what you're saying. And I always said to people, I'm not an actress. I never was an actress. And that wouldn't have sat well with me. So I'm very grateful for the way that it all turned out. But in order to answer your question, I would say that possibly people didn't take me seriously. That was possible. Oh, look at her, blah, blah, blah. But I bet you they were surprised I came in 12th too. I don't know that I was taken seriously. There are council in the city, I think, that were respectful of me. But yeah, I didn't really get any flack from the community, which was also interesting to me. I didn't know how they were going to respond to that, to me running. But I never felt, and this is very sad, but I never felt as though I was being treated as an equal by the, by the council that was already serving. It's been a really different experience for me here in Nebing. So I will say right from the get-go, right from the very first phone call to their office, I have always felt equal here. I have always felt like I am an equal and that I am respected as an equal and I am treated so well. So well. So yeah, it's very, very different here. So it's, yeah, this upcoming election, it's important to me because I am excited to see who's going to get in. The current council has been supporting my projects and my business activities, my personal life. I mean, they have been phenomenal. So it's been so different. So I don't know if I answered your question, Shauna.
Well, here's another part of that. So at the beginning, and you did answer it, and quite eloquently you did. You kind of alluded to changing the system from the inside as opposed to changing it from the outside. And I have always felt like I wasn't the person to change it from the inside. And because it is a broken system that serves patriarchy, colonialism, everything else, capitalism. And you talked about a circle. And so, kind of sitting around in collaboration, sitting around a circle, even if it's virtual, it's even passing a stick, right? Passing the speaking stick of, so everyone gets a voice, and that our political system isn't set up that way. In fact, you saying you had no budget, even the access to run has a price tag. So someone who doesn't have the means to even buy signs or a banner, right, or and you have to get a certain amount of signatures to even drop your hat into the ring. And, I think, how do we change a system that has been in place for, since 1867? We've had the Canada that we have, and how do we keep a democracy and yet hear voices that aren't being heard in a political system that is basically eliminated the voices of women, the voices of Black and Indigenous people of color, disabled folks, and people who are impoverished or houseless? There's no way that they would be able to access or gain the influence to sit at the table and have a voice and a conversation. So I don't have the answer to how to solve that. But what I know to be true is that people are frustrated with what we have right now. So looking to change something, even if it's something small, to build community again, trust, that has to be healed. And it's a slow process. It's taken a long time for people to lose that trust. It's almost like we've accepted that politicians are this way, that they are arrogant, and they are nasty, and we accept that is part of politics, and we don't have to. But
no, we don't have to. We don't have to. And yeah. I don't believe that a leader has to be like that in order to lead. I mean, I observe, and I've had the great pleasure of working with chiefs from the far north who, you know, when there's a decision to be made within their communities, and their community could be 200 people, could be 1,500 people, could be a couple thousand people. But again, the communities are small. And when, you know, when the chief and their council needs to make a decision, they don't arbitrarily make the decision on behalf of the community. That's not how it works. You know, they will go to each of the family heads, sit with them and have tea and consult with them what should be done. And they receive their answers, and then they'll go back to whatever table it is and give their decision. Even if they don't necessarily believe that that is the right decision, they are going to follow the guidance from their community members. I feel like that would be a much better way for us to be, I don't know, respecting the circle in general. So I would like to see more of that kind of leadership versus the way it is now. Because even our road accessible First Nations don't operate the same way. They don't operate the same way. They will take it upon themselves to make decisions. Some of them, I'm not saying they're all like that, but primarily speaking, there is that distinction between the road accessible and the fly-ins. So I love that that's what the fly-in communities do. I just love it. And then if you get to sit in a room where all of these chiefs are voting on something, and now it's 51, there used to be 49 for the longest time. Now it's 51. So you have 51 chiefs presenting their community's vote on an issue. It's remarkable. It's just a remarkable experience. And, you know, I've been in the room with the chiefs when a decision has been made that they weren't sure how it was going to go and it went favorably. And, you know, to see these very respectful, professional, what's the word? I don't want to say stern because that's not who they are. They're very, very kind. But to see these grown men and women with tears rolling down their faces because, you know, because the decision has been made and it was what they were hoping would come through. To me, that's what community should be like. That's how I would love to see it, not the way that it is now. You know, government making policies and then they roll these policies out and they want to force these policies onto community members with us not having a say in it, like we didn't get to contribute to the conversation. So I don't like that. I don't think that's the way that our land, you know, should be run or should be respected. I feel that's very disrespectful. So I would prefer to see it the other way. You know, why can't we have a clan system? The government has adopted it to some degree, right? And they have been adopting it over the centuries. But, you know, why can't we have a system like that, a clan system or a neighborhood system or whatever it is, so that every neighborhood, every community would have a voice in the decisions? I'm throwing it out there.
Well, so people would argue, though, that that's what ridings are, right? And representatives for each riding. And I'm going to guess that that's the way that ideally they wanted that to roll out was each of your communities has, you know, a geographical area in a riding, and it is that person's responsibility to collect and meet with as many organizations and leaders as possible. But there's, I was going to say, when you were talking about consulting the community and going to each family, and that is, and I know, I know the other side of this, but it is time consuming. It is time consuming to do that. And so we're not used to that. We're not used to letting go of the immediacy, the urgency, the hustle, the busyness, and making conversations and story the priority rather than vice versa. You know, being showing up for that ribbon cutting, or that, you know, the shovel in the ground, and
Mhm.
all of those things. Those are part of a representative's, you know, jobs, quote unquote, or job description. And those take up time. And if they don't do those things, people say, I never see them. You know, we invited them and they didn't come.
Mhm.
Uh, and so how do they do that when the ridings are massive, massive, you know, geographically? You know, we've gotten away from being able to do that because of the way that everything is designed with a capitalist colonial lens. Everything, the
Yeah.
writings, the way we conduct business, all of the things. It's all, you know, very full of noise, full of busyness, stress, strife,
Mhm.
schedules. And I don't know any different. I've grown up that way. And it's not to say that things can't change, but what is it that we can do or ask for to open that up, to, you know, open it up so that there's something different in a choice.
Yeah. I think that it's kind of a similar situation as saying, if we're looking at the borders, right? We're looking at borders. So the border between US and Canada, the border between Ontario and Manitoba, etc. The border of, you know, the District of Thunder Bay, which is humongous. It's
Yeah.
humongous. People don't
Yeah.
realize how large that district is. So that system's not working. This borders, these systems of borders.
Mm.
I think that, you know, I think we need to go back to, as I was saying, you know, if the Northern Chiefs are visiting the heads of families, whoa, I got a fly on my screen here. If they're visiting the heads of families, so they're talking to the family heads, and so that individual will speak on behalf of their family. I see no reason why we couldn't do that within neighborhoods or smaller communities. There's no reason why that couldn't be done. And so you could hold a community meeting where everybody could come and bring their voice, or you could hold, you could have online questionnaires. You know, we get asked to do surveys all the time. There's social media opportunities. There's so many ways that we can, you know, or not advocate, but articulate what our desires are. What I found crushing about the current system is things like, you know, let's say our charity that applied for funding through the City of Thunder Bay to do the work to help the people, to help the vulnerable people. And we were informed in writing through a letter that we didn't have the capacity to do this work, and so therefore they would not be providing us with the funding. Well, I thought, wow, nothing like putting up, you know, a huge barrier for improvement. So what does that do? Well, that shuts that door of communication down, like, completely. There's no opening there to have a conversation. They declare that, hey, we are better than you. We're telling you that you don't have the capacity to do this. End of conversation. So what is that doing? How is that helping anyone? So, you know, they do things like create a very, very large courthouse. Oh my goodness. All of that funding could have been invested in the people, rather than what I see, creating an ivory tower, a legacy for the people that are in power at that time. What are they doing now? They're creating a very large correctional center. Again, why not spend those billions of dollars on the people? Why not do that instead? And so that we don't have 75% Indigenous population in the jails or whatever it's at right now. You know, I don't believe in these decisions that they're making. And they're making these decisions arbitrarily for their own benefit, to line their own pockets. It's not about what the community really wants, or what the community could benefit from. It's not about that. You know, the latest discussion in Thunder Bay has been about the, I don't know, building some kind of a turf center or something. It's like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, what about all the people that don't have homes? What about all the people that have been separated from their families? What about all the people that are impacted by trauma? And the list goes on and on and on and on. It's so scary. I mean, the gangs are literally taking over the city, and people are not feeling safe in their neighborhoods anymore. So I don't know that they're making the best decisions right now.
I think that that's always been the case. I think that as a politician, it would be difficult to make everyone happy. However, there is a perception that they need to uphold that they're doing something. And when you say line their pockets, that's exactly the goal. Is once you're in power, if you want to make change, you have to stay in power. And so how do you do that without courting the people that have money, that can help you with your campaign, that can help, you know, subsidize charitable or nonprofit programs?
Right.
And yeah, they have to show something. What you said is very true, is a legacy. So no one wants to sit on a council or as an MP or an MPP or an MLA and not have something to show for it, and not have someone look on their Wikipedia site or whatever and see that, oh, that, you know, I checked that box. That was my campaign promise. I checked that box. That was my campaign promise. But what about all the other things you couldn't do that you said you would? And I just keep coming back to, why is it acceptable for us? We just accept that politics is the way it is, that politics is, you know, making yourself look good, always talking up the things you've done and the things that are positive, but don't talk about the negative things. Don't own anything that you are sorry for or that you couldn't connect with. Never hear those things. Never. I mean, no one's going to run a re-election campaign on, here's the things I didn't do, unless they say, here's the things I didn't do because I didn't have enough time. So vote me in again.
Yeah. There's always that, isn't there? It's so frustrating to me that, you know, an individual that you knew, that you worked with, that you know, had conversations with in the past, and then they get elected, and then somehow, well, they are too good to talk to you anymore. They're too good to listen to you anymore, to see what you have to say. They won't give you even 5 minutes of their time. I can't handle that. I can't. To me, there is no justification for that. Absolutely not. You know, if the leader, whoever was voted in, is struggling with perhaps their party is saying, yeah, you can't talk to anybody. You can't, you can't spend any time with anybody. Then be vulnerable with that and share that with us. Tell us, oh, well, the party's not letting me talk to you, because then at least, as an individual, if I voted for your party, well, then that gives me a choice the next time. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be voting for this party. There's all of that. But I mean, I think about, as a professional, I worked with these people in the past. Now they don't want to associate with me. I'm having that experience. What is the experience like for people that maybe didn't know that person ahead of time, and now they're trying to approach them? There's advocates on the behalf of climate change that have been trying to work with, and I guess I better not mention any names here, but but that's frustrating to me, that they are not giving their time to these individuals. That is what you got voted in for. That is your responsibility. So you are not meeting your responsibilities in any way, shape, or form. The only one that you're meeting the obligation for, from what I can see from the outside, is that you're meeting your party's obligation, and that's it. You're not meeting the obligations of the people. Maybe you're listening to the people that have big money. Maybe that's who you're listening to, but you're not listening to, the people that are trying to make ends meet, or maybe have a home. Maybe they don't have a home and they're trying to figure out how to get a home. I mean, there's so much trauma in the area. It's very, very scary. It's so discouraging.
Do you think that sometimes people don't make those priorities because it makes them uncomfortable? That they maybe never have known someone that has been struggling with addiction or mental health issues, or houseless, couch surfing. Perhaps they don't have lived experience with a relative or someone they know, and it really makes them uncomfortable to even confront their own bias, perhaps.
I think it definitely makes them uncomfortable, but I do not believe that they're not familiar with it. I don't think that there's a family anywhere that hasn't been impacted by trauma in one way or another, whether that's a medical situation, whether it's a housing situation, whether it's a financial situation. I mean, every family has been impacted by trauma in some way or another. So absolutely, these leaders are familiar with that, because if you were to have a conversation with someone, you would find out very quickly that, maybe their son has an addiction. Maybe their brother went to jail. I don't think that exists anymore. I don't think so. Maybe it never did, but I don't think that these leaders have not been touched by trauma. I believe they have been. But why is it that they can't show their vulnerability, be human, and share that? The training that I provide for industry and corporations to establish, to initiate and foster relationships with Indigenous people is, I will always say, go to the common denominators. Food and humor are two very successful ones to create relationship with Indigenous people. So I would suggest using that same format for everyone, right? I recently did some building anniversary celebrations in the area here, and that's what we did. We had food, we had music, we had some games for the kids, we played some different things, we did ceremony. That was to provide an opportunity for I see the baby coming in there. For individuals to see, okay, I could approach this person and I could talk to them and I could have that heart to heart. That's all people need. They need a doorway opened up so that that can happen. And we need to be doing more of that. We all need to be doing more of that. It's not just on the politicians, it's on us as well, but we need to be doing more of that. We need to have conversation, because it's through that sharing that we get to learn so much about each other. And then, perhaps you can provide some help or a possible option or a suggestion. Well, we can't do that without having a conversation. So that's the first thing I believe the politicians need to be doing, is having an actual down-to-earth conversation. That's the first
And
step.
so I love what you said about, and I agree. I think conversation is really important, and people are afraid. People are afraid to start conversations because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. And that's when vulnerability comes in. And I want to go back to what you said about everybody has been touched by trauma, which is so true. And I think I have heard or seen, on social media, that people will say, I've experienced trauma in my family, why, in intergenerational trauma, why is it different for Indigenous people? That's not my words, and they will argue that. And the thing is people, I think someone said to me, oh, I'm Irish. And I'm like, well, I'm Irish too. But here's the thing. We came here. Indigenous people were already here. I think people forget that Indigenous people were the first keepers and are the keepers of Canada, of our land.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why people don't understand that or
accept it.
Yes. Why that's so hard to accept.
Yeah, it is. I find that it is a hard thing, but I do feel the shift happening, though. I do feel a shift happening. Too. I feel that I hear more and more people using that respectful terminology in their conversation. So I do believe that it is changing, at least, in my region, if you will, let's say Ontario. I think that it's changing in Ontario. I think people are slowly getting there, but the evidence illustrates that we are not quite there yet. Because if we think about reconciliation as one topic, there were 94 calls to action put out in 2015. This is now 2022, and in 7 years, only 11 calls to action have been completed. Mm. That is ridiculous. And one of those calls was to declare the September 30th as National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So, I mean, how hard was that? We think about what they did recently for the Queen or the Pope, what they were able to accomplish in a few days for the Queen or for the Pope. So it's not that they are not able to, or that they can't make those changes. It is definitely possible for them to do that. There's just no drive to do it. So yeah, so even thinking about reconciliation as one topic, it's disheartening, right? It's disheartening to see that the people that have the great pleasure of living on this land do not respect the people that were here for thousands of years. Will we ever know how long they've been here? I don't think so. I don't know that they ever will. But, at least in this area, we know it's at least 12,000 years. I believe it's a lot more. Why isn't there a respect for the people? Why don't we have that? So yeah, it can be very disheartening. But I will say though, I will say that I have been experiencing a shift. I do see that there's a shift happening. And I think that by the time the next generation, so my children's age, are the leaders of this land, I think it's going to be very different.
A lot has happened in a short time. The pandemic has sped up so much awakening for so many people. And it is a hopeful awakening, I think. And you're right, the shift is happening, and people are actually reading the calls to action after 7 years and realizing that they have a place. Every individual has a place. You can do, my friend Stella says, do what you can where you are with what you have.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple thing, donating, reaching out, mentoring, visiting your closest Indigenous community, taking a drive through to see what's there and who's there, or making an appointment to ask if you could have a tour, to learn more. Be vulnerable. That's the thing, right? We all need to be vulnerable and accept our ownership of our own ancestors.
Yeah.
No matter how proud you are of what they did, no matter how proud, they still contributed to the oppression of Canada's first people. And we need to own that. That's part of the healing.
And it's not a historical thing, because yes, it happened in history.
Yeah.
But it's still happening today.
Absolutely.
So, we think about the children that continue to be apprehended. That's a crime that I can't, it's hard to deal with. It really is, that it's still happening. And today, the children are being apprehended by our own people. So what happened there? Like that feels like a bizarro world. I mean, and the elders are not happy. They're not happy about this. They're very discouraged. And that's just one small aspect, right? We think about incarceration. We think about, drug rehabilitation. We think about all these things that our communities are dealing with. So yeah, there's a lot on the table. And like you said earlier, it's not as if we're going to solve it in this time frame. But just like your friend Stella said, we can all contribute. We can all make a difference. If I choose, and my daughters and I do this almost all the time, if I choose to give some money to a vulnerable person that is asking for money, we're not only going to hand them the money, we're going to have a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. We'll ask them where they're from, have they been living here for a while? How's it going? Can I help you to access any services? Is there something that I can do to help you today? We're going to have a conversation, because but for the grace of God, go I. My children and I have been homeless in the past. And it's a very shameful experience to go through, very shameful. And certainly my children were innocent, didn't deserve that. That was not on them. So, I think that if we let our vulnerability show through, and we can empathize with others, I think this place would be so changed. I'm not afraid to tell people that I love them. Mm. I wouldn't have been able to do that even 5 years ago. So I think that we're all growing, we're all shifting, we're all changing. And, if we can continue to inspire others, then I think that's the greatest thing that we can do. And even though I am very critical and cynical about the world of politics, I do still care about these individuals. And if they wanted to have a conversation with me, I would be happy to do that. I would invite them to do that.
Yeah. And I think so many people want to do that. I mean, and now is when people are campaigning. And so they're willing to have those conversations because they want to get your vote, of course. And I don't think there's a person that gets into politics at the beginning that isn't well-meaning, that isn't, at least wanting to do something more or different within their community. And I think, however, the lure of the power of it is very intoxicating. And the fact that you are, the person for your community can be you can just get lured into it. And it's not to say, again, like I'm alluding to, is that it's not to say there aren't some people out there that are really trying and really doing those things.
Absolutely.
And very
Absolutely.
much carrying out what you're saying and having those conversations. But again, so women politicians or women leaders have all of those responsibilities to have those conversations, to open that dialogue, to listen intently, but also they have all the other things at home that they're dealing with. If they have children and a family and grandchildren, or, like you say, no one has been untouched by trauma. And so they deal with so they carry all of that baggage with them into a political arena, and the exhaustion that comes along with holding all of those in the same cloud that is them, like all of those things. So I have a great deal of empathy for women who try to do that, who have that, calling, if they feel called to do that, but have all of those other responsibilities that can, split their time.
Yeah. But I would love to see your second episode get into more of, how do we share with one another? How do we have conversations? How are we promoting the circle out there? How are we inviting individuals into the circle? How are we doing these things? Because to me, that's going to promote true reconciliation. I'm not a big fan of the word, but that's the word we have right now. I would rather it be something like interconnectedness or something like that. A community of belonging. I love that. I love that very, very much, because we all should feel that we belong in our community and feel safe in our community. So, I'll end with that today, saying that would be my striving for. And then once we get to that place, then maybe that will also help the earth. That kind of relationship with each other would promote that kind of a relationship with the earth as well. That's what I would hope. Who is this?
I think that's a great way to end it. And we'll look to pull in people that can talk to those, that can speak to those and facilitate those conversations in future episodes. Yes, Cindy, thank you as always.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I'm going to stop the recording.
Sure.